Join us as we discuss Final Fantasy VIII, the next episode of the Time Hop Podcast. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another exciting episode of the Time Hop Podcast. I'm your host, David Lozada. I'm joined with Lindsay Schubert.
Hello.
And Tim Ronan.
Hello.
In case you don't know, the Time Hop Podcast is a podcast that plays games of the past to let you know if they're worth playing today. Today's topic of the show is all about Final Fantasy VIII. A very controversial title in the Final Fantasy franchise. But before we get into Final Fantasy VIII, how are you guys doing? How's your week been? Lindsay, how was your week?
Good. Lots of job searching. All these places in New York want me to interview for them right now, and I'm like, but I can't. I'm not there.
Yeah, it's a challenge. That's a challenge. Have you been looking at like remote jobs?
I mean, I have like one remote thing that I have been doing for a few weeks now. I haven't been doing it as much lately because I've been focused on Google Analytics, cleaning out my room of things that I don't need for my move,
Right.
and also just like, I guess overall getting ready for the move. So yeah, I've been.
That's understandable. Yeah. I mean, what I was gonna say was, what I was gonna suggest is maybe like get like a remote job. That way you have like something to pay the rent for like a first month or so, and then like, you know, once you're in New York, you really have to get into it. You know, go to an interview every day, every other day, because it's, I mean, you know, over 8 million people here, so there's a lot of competition. So
yeah, like I'm gonna be mixing both because I have the remote opportunity where I'm like writing, editing, and like categorizing things for Metro. They're owned by CBS. Like,
cool.
You could do like all of that, like as many assignments as you want, you know, and you get paid. So it's pretty nice, but I need to be more on it. Other than that, I've also been streaming, so.
Gotcha. All right. Well, you do you, and I wish you the best of luck with the move and everything, because I know it's a very intense process.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be something. We're figuring all that out right now because I'm trying to figure out a date to actually leave here. So I'm thinking maybe like March 13th or something. Yeah, a little over a month now.
Just FYI, it's still cold here in March, so like, no, seriously,
I know, yeah.
I'd say like April, May is when it starts. Not even April. I'd say May is when it starts to get warm here. The winters have been really long recently, so yeah, just a heads up. You know, if you're gonna move here in March, be prepared for the cold because it's not gonna get warm soon. That's for sure.
Yeah, I have in mind that I'm definitely gonna get some winter clothes, some clothes to get in gear for the snow.
So
yeah.
Tim, are you enjoying the nice weather that we're having up here, up north?
Yeah, it's been different. I mean, I guess I don't really care one way or the other, but it's all right.
Yeah, I mean, it's not so bad. I you know, it's like a nice kind of like reprieve, like, because like I think the past 2 days or 3 days, it's been unnaturally warm, like kind of spring like in the 60s, 70s here in New York and kind of like the tri-state area. And today is when it started to get cold again. Now it's dipping down to the 40s and 30s. But I enjoyed it while it lasted. That's why I asked, because you know, you got to enjoy it when you can, man, because otherwise, you're gonna you're gonna be cold for a long time. That's the one thing about New York I don't like. It's the cold. It sucks. It's like you can
The
never
thing
do
right
anything.
now is the thing right now is that Florida often has like it kind of follows what's going on up north because like when there's like a cold front coming in, it seems to be spreading across the whole eastern part of the US. So
Oh,
it'll get colder down here for a bit, but not as cold as you guys, but still.
yeah. I mean that last week that polar vortex, man, that was brutal. That gave me chills, man. That was really not good. And I know you felt it down there in Florida, so.
Yeah, it was in the 40s, 50s down here. I didn't like it because like you could feel it coming off of the walls, and I sleep right next to the freaking wall. So
Gotcha.
like,
Yeah, I know. It's like
so
it permeates everything. Yeah. All right. So I'm very glad to hear that you guys are doing fine. So let's move on to news of the week. Before we jump back to the past, let's explore the present. Lindsay, what news stuck out to you this past week?
apparently there's gonna be a Halo theme park coming here to Orlando in the summer, and like I feel very bittersweet about it because it's like yay more things for Orlando, but also at the same time I'm about to move, so it's like why?
So this theme park is just like owned and operated by Microsoft. It has nothing to do with like Universal, or it's just its own thing, right?
Yes, yeah, that is correct. It says Microsoft's 343 and Hershend Live. The traveling theme park will include VR, escape rooms, life-sized vehicles, and a Halo ring.
Wow, that is pretty cool. Tim, what do you make of that?
Sorry, what was it exactly? A Halo theme park, you said?
Yeah, it's a Halo theme park. It's going to be actually at the Orange County Convention Center. They have VR, escape rooms, life-size vehicles, and a Halo ring.
A Halo ring?
Yeah,
What,
I don't
like
exactly.
decoration, or
I'm not
like
sure.
do they have like a gravity rig that you can like walk up on it or something?
That would be really cool, but I don't know. I would hope.
Yeah, that would be
That's
dope.
interesting.
Well, I hope that maybe it comes up here. I don't really know what to say. I hope that
They
it
should. Sorry, they should have like mongoose go karting or something.
Oh, that would be cool.
that would be really cool. Oh man. Tim, you're giving them really good ideas. Yeah, I'm not too familiar with the Halo series, but like, yeah, there's a lot of potential there. So, I wish them the best with that. I hope it's kind of like a rotating thing, like a tour type of thing.
Yeah,
But it sounds like it's a lot of work. So, uh, you know, maybe it's only Orlando, unfortunately.
like touring theme parks should become more of a thing. That's a great idea, actually.
Well,
Is that a thing? I didn't know that was a thing.
Like apparently it is with the Halo theme park at least.
I know that Overwatch did something like the Pro Hero Tour or something that they went to, but it wasn't like its own thing. It went to like conventions around, like gaming conventions around the world, and they had like their own little special booth or something.
mhm.
It wasn't really that big of a deal. It was just kind of like taking pictures or whatever, or like taking, there were a lot of cosplayers there or something, but kind of like in the similar vein of, of what Microsoft is getting at with this Halo thing. I would assume. I'm not too sure. But anyway, very cool. I hope them nothing but the best with that. Tim, what's your news this week?
Well, I wanted to talk about Apex Legends, which just came out. It's from the same devs of Titanfall. That's Respawn. I think they're actually, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they're owned by EA.
Yes.
Or something.
Yeah, they're owned by EA now.
There's some kind of affiliation there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I guess they, at some point, like when this came out, they were saying that, yeah, we made this. We're not currently planning to make a Titanfall 3, which I think some people were disappointed about. But here's this free-to-play battle royale game anyway. But yeah, it kind of just came out of nowhere. Like I literally woke up one day and everyone seemed to be talking about it. And it's, I mean, still it's sitting on the top spot for Twitch viewers. I think it was at like 300,000 like the day it came out, and even now it's still like 250k or something. And then it'll probably go down and Fortnite will take over again, but people seem to enjoy it for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
And it like, I guess it takes place in the Titanfall universe, so it's not like a totally separate thing. It's kind of a spin-off sort of deal.
Oh, it does take place in the Titanfall universe? I don't know.
It does, yeah.
Oh, interesting. Well, from what I saw about it, like gameplay wise, I heard it was like a cross between like Fortnite, the battle royale aspects of that, but also like Overwatch, because they have their own legends that you choose, like these heroes that you choose with their own abilities.
Right. That's right.
So it's kind of like something like of a hybrid, so people kind of dig it. And people who've actually played it, they said it's actually pretty good. So do I see this overtaking Fortnite? Hell no. That's no way, because it's like this does not have the mass appeal that Fortnite does. It doesn't have the celebrity attachment, etc., etc. But is it something that, could earn a number 2 or 3 spot? Maybe. I don't know. I could see this like surpassing maybe Black Ops 4, their battle royale mode. I could see it easily surpassing whatever Battlefield 5 has planned. So, yeah, very, very interesting that they, speaking of Battlefield 5, very interesting that they dropped this, considering that Battlefield 5 is releasing their battle royale mode in March. So wouldn't that be competing? Why would they do that? I don't know, but yeah, interesting. I have no intentions of playing this game whatsoever. Lindsay, what about you? Are you interested in Apex Legends?
I'll probably play it if other friends are playing it, but there's so many battle royale games right now. It's hard to,
find
really
the motivation.
Like, they all just feel the same and whatnot. Like, I started off pretty much, well, all the way back, I was playing, H1Z1, and then I was eventually introduced to, I don't know if Arma 3 would be one, counted as one, and then eventually Fortnite. So, Fortnite would pretty much, that would be the extent of it, I think. But that's it.
So you're burned out, basically.
Yeah. It's just too much battle royale.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I've never played a battle royale game, but I have no intentions to. And Apex Legends is not gonna push me over the edge. It doesn't look that, compelling to me. It looks kind of like just another shooter game. So I don't know. But speaking of Apex Legends, my news story of the week also has to do with EA as a whole, as a publisher, because they recently had their annual, not their annual, but their most recent fiscal report for the end of Q4, I believe, or Q3. Yeah, Q3 2019. Basically, their head leadership said we're disappointed in our underperformance. That's their quote, citing Battlefield 5's poor sales, which I think we had mentioned before in this podcast. It was like discounted to $30, not even a week after released, and also poor sales from the mobile division of their company, specifically in regards to Command and Conquer Rivals, which some people, you may remember from last E3, people were really upset about that game, because it basically was, what some people saw as a bastardized version of the Command and Conquer series. So, I could see that not doing well, given all the backlash. But they're citing FIFA as kind of like their tentpole kind of franchise, and kind of moving ahead in the future, and establishing some kind of revenue for them. And they're looking forward to Anthem and this Apex Legends. It's really interesting that they released Apex Legends when they did, because it's kind of like, hey, like this is something to look forward to in the future. And it, I don't know how to feel, like, given, I mean, this is clearly very orchestrated, right? Like, they knew that they're obviously, these are smart people. They knew that they had, their fiscal quarter was ending and whatever. They needed to pump out some kind of game, given all the controversies that happened last year with Star Wars, etc., etc. So they needed to kind of release this right away, and they tasked Respawn with doing it. Speaking of Respawn, Tim, I know you mentioned that Titanfall 3 isn't supposed to be coming out this year, but EA, their leadership said that there is a game planned for this year, which is kind of contradicting what people at Respawn said. So I'm very confused as to the messaging there. They also have a game coming out called Star Wars, what is it? Jedi Fallen Order. So I don't know. What do you guys make of EA and kind of like their disappointing sales results and et cetera, et cetera? Do you think it's kind of justified, or are you sad, or are you kind of apathetic about it?
I'm so like fed up with EA, and it's like I want to expect things from them, but you can't really do that at this point.
Yeah.
They've delivered so many disappointments in the past few years, or not even delivered. They would cancel, and
Yeah. I mean, they were bastardized franchises, for the sake of a pretty penny, at least from the perspective of a lot of, the gaming public, like Star Wars Battlefront and Command and Conquer and countless other franchises that I can't think of right now, but, FIFA, stuff like that. So, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's kind of like seeing a once revered kind of third party publisher fall from grace, and it's a little sad to see, despite the fact that EA is EA and they're very they're very revenue driven, let's say. So I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, we know that they
it.
have money. They go to E3 every year. They're being lazy.
I don't know if they're being lazy or it's just poor management, or it's just like they're managing their portfolio really poorly, and they're not dedicating research. They're not listening to their audience. They're not, So it's sad to see, in my opinion. Hopefully they'll turn things around, and all we can do is hope for the best. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so let's move on to the topic of the show. As I mentioned before, this week's topic is all about Final Fantasy VIII, originally released for the PlayStation 1 on February 11th, 1999 in Japan. I believe it released in North America in September that year. Anyway, it's celebrating its 20th anniversary in 2019, which is, wow, makes me feel really old because I remember playing this game not too long after it released. So, damn. In case you don't know what Final Fantasy is about, Final Fantasy VIII is all about. It stars a young mercenary called Squall Leonhart, and he is in a school that's tasked with kind of learning about how to fight sorceresses from the future, which is really a bizarre kind of premise, but trust me, it gets even weirder as you play the game. And it kind of sees Squall develop into a leader and command this small ragtag party of fellow students and other kind of misfits in fighting this grand sorceress called the Ultimate Meshia? I don't really know how to pronounce her name. And he, there's some romantic elements in there with Renoa and et cetera, et cetera. It's pretty much known for its heavy use of 3D graphics and pre-rendered backgrounds. Final Fantasy VII did that very much so, but this one does it even more to a more kind of more pronounced effect. Here, it's grounded more in reality. Their characters are more realistically proportioned. They're less kind of like cartoony characters. It's still a really kind of abstract plot, but at least it's more believable, if that makes any sense. And it trickles down to all the various elements of the game. So without further ado, let's talk about the game's presentation. Lindsay, I know you have a lot to say about this game. So go ahead. What do you think about Final Fantasy VIII's presentation?
Even in its old PS1 graphics, the game looks stunning, and I just looked at how it looks on PC, and I was like, wow. I wasn't expecting it to be so much more improved. I mean, you still see polygons and such, but it's much clearer. It's a lot more crisp. But like I said, even for the PS1 version, like I get goosebumps just watching the intro.
It's pretty impressive, yeah.
Yeah. I think overall, if you go classic or the remastered, it looks beautiful.
I agree. Tim, what do you think about Final Fantasy VIII's presentation?
Yeah, it seems like it holds up pretty well, especially since it was from like 1999. I thought it was actually developed a little bit later than that, but I guess it wasn't. Yeah, it just seems to. It's definitely appealing, and even there's moments where there's like nice blending of like the cutscenes and like actual gameplay. I noticed.
Yeah, I agree. I think that this is kind of like what the game excels at. One of its better kind of qualities, aside from the music, which we'll get to later, which is by far its best quality. But that's not to say that the presentation isn't awesome. I feel like the characters themselves are they're well kind of rendered. They're well kind of designed. They're very like easy to kind of not fall in love with, but kind of surrender to, in the sense that you kind of care for their motivations, you kind of care for them. Even Squall, to an extent, which is kind of like a carbon copy of Cloud. I don't like Squall at all. I think he's very kind of antagonistic for no reason. But even he is like somehow amicable, and he's like, I think the most amicable character here is Renoa, but that's kind of getting to the story. But just the way that they're designed, and how the movements that they do, and et cetera, kind of all seamlessly blends into something that's human-like and very easy to, believe. I know I used that word before, but I don't know. Like, when I look at this game, it feels like it's, I don't know. I feel like it's almost in the same quality as something like one of the games that I love, like Final Fantasy X, or when you put it side by side to like even 12, some of the presentational aspects hold up. I feel like 12 is very much grounded in, at least the designs are very much grounded in reality. So I feel like they're similar in a way, which is a testament to Final Fantasy VIII, and how well it kind of thought ahead about everything. So yeah, its presentation is definitely one of its standout qualities. Gameplay. What do you think of Final Fantasy VIII's gameplay, Lindsay?
I don't know too much about the gameplay per se, because I haven't played through it, but in general, I love Final Fantasy. I love playing the games. It's always very challenging, and I still haven't gotten through Final Fantasy VII after retrying it several times. The gameplay always feels very rewarding in Final Fantasy games, because you get through the bosses, and sometimes you have to grind up to get to bosses. But then you're rewarded with learning more about the characters, the story, and such. So it's always a great balance between story and grinding slash battling, like battling characters in the main story.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I understand what you mean. I have a different opinion about the grinding, but Tim, go ahead. What do you think of the gameplay of Final Fantasy VIII?
So I haven't played this one specifically, and I also haven't played any Final Fantasy games, actually. I guess, but specifically something I noticed about this is that it seemed like there was a decent number of loading screens, and they seemed a little bit slow sometimes, which I guess I could imagine getting a little bit annoying. And then even, I don't know, even switching in and out of battle and having to deal with that can kind of get annoying. And that can maybe be attributed to that's kind of a staple of that style of game, but it's just something I noticed.
Mm-hmm. I feel like that's a good point that you brought up. I feel like the loading times, they're annoying when you compare them to loading times today, but like at the time it felt kind of commensurate to the loading times of other JRPGs like Legend of Dragoon or something like that. Like I felt like it was kind of like expected, like how you mentioned.
Yeah,
some of these moments are you're almost anticipating them. It's that same kind of feeling where you're almost anticipating that they're going to be long load times, and in consequence it makes it seem shorter than what they are. So it's noticeable if you're playing like a JRPG today, like Ni no Kuni 2 or something, and then you're playing this, right after. Of course, it's noticeable. But if you're playing like Final Fantasy VII and Legend of Dragoon and all these other JRPGs like Valkyrie Chronicles or whatever, and then you just come to this, it's not as disparate. It's not that big of a deal, I don't think. as far as gameplay is concerned, I feel like this is the weakest aspect of Final Fantasy VIII in the sense that it doesn't really iterate a lot on the tried and true Final Fantasy formula. It's it's the same turn-based kind of strategy that almost every other Final Fantasy game has used since then, with the exception of 12 and 15 and yeah, I think yeah. So it's not really that different. In fact, I feel like it's actually a dumbed down version of Final Fantasy VII in the sense that Final Fantasy VII encouraged you to more kind of experiment with your skills and your summons and your magic. Here, you could very easily beat the game just using physical attacks and swapping out your weapons and that kind of that spiel. Like it's not very sophisticated, and that's kind of like a point of concern for me for Final Fantasy VIII, in that you would think that it would be more kind of they would kind of like double down on what made Final Fantasy VII great and the variety in gameplay, but here they just kind of did a 180 and they just kind of I don't know, kind of put all their resources into the physical attacks, but there's not a lot of emphasis on everything else. That being said, there is emphasis on gathering magic spells, which is annoying as fuck because it's kind of like a loot grind, and it's not very fun because, especially knowing that you're not going to use these spells in battle and they're kind of useless. So and you have to grind for these spells because you can't move on to the next section of the game without them. So it's just really annoying for like a one-time use, and then you're done with them. It's kind of like HMs in Pokemon or something like that. It's kind of like just there for the sake of being there. Did not enjoy that, but is it accessible to people who don't play JRPGs very often? Yeah, of course it is. Like I mentioned before, because it relies so much on physical attacks, and because you can kind of just press a couple buttons and kill things. Yeah, and I feel like the variation in the world map, and then the town map and the battle map, like it's pretty unique in that sense. I mean, Final Fantasy VII did it too, but it continues that kind of tradition. So it improves on some aspects, but it's mostly kind of a regression, I feel like, for the series, at least in my opinion. Moving on to the sound design, my favorite part of Final Fantasy VIII. Lindsay, what did you think of Final Fantasy VIII's sound design?
I was just gonna say the same thing. This is my favorite part to talk about right now. So I deliberately listen to Final Fantasy soundtracks pretty often, and Final Fantasy VIII is one of the top that I listen to. So for me, my favorite songs from the game I wanted to list, and they are Lamb Garden, Waltz for the Moon, The Man with the Machine Gun, Fragments of Memories, Fisherman's Horizon, and yeah, that's what I've listened to for like the past few years from 8. I think that the sound design, it's supposed to give you those feels.
Well said.
Final Fantasy games are so great at invoking those feelings of like longing and like love and all of that. Like another example for that would be like Final Fantasy VII or 10, where you see a lot of that going on with the characters and the optimal composition going with that. Like,
yeah,
it's just one of the best parts of the Final Fantasy series.
I feel like, and Tim, I'll let you speak in a second, but I feel like Waltz for the Moon especially kind of highlights what you just said, that feeling of longing, but it's also kind of like a celebration of the present. Like it has like these these jovial kind of notes in it, but somehow or other, it's also kind of like, oh, but I want more. Do you know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
it's so. I feel like Final Fantasy games do this so well. I agree with you. Like the ambiguity of like the moment, they capture that so well. I think it's just a testament to music in general of kind of, you know, conveying this type of emotion that you can't really put to words very well. I don't know. It really puts you in the moment. Tim, what did you think of Final Fantasy VIII sound design?
Yeah, I mean, just agreeing with what you guys said, but then going to a separate point, I kind of appreciate that during certain moments, um, like if there's a chase scene or whatever, that the background music that's playing isn't replaced by the normal battle music if you start fighting something, and it that just kind of serves to like maintain the mood, and there's no like victory fanfare after the battle either, which is kind of nice, and just maintaining that kind of mood and like the mood of the situation.
Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of variation in these kind of moods. Like it's the same mood, it's the same like upbeat tempo or what have you, but it's also a different kind of uh I don't know. I'm not a musician. I don't know the terminology here, but it's a different kind of tune, and it really you're right. It does well in maintaining this constant emotion without making it feel like it's very trite and I think Final Fantasy VII, that's what kind of lacked in its sound design, is that there are so many repeated kind of sounds, but especially in the battle sections, like there are a lot of like, okay, yeah, like it just becomes something that's uh in the back of your head, almost like you kind of ignore it. But here it's like it's almost as if the game hits you with different sounds at every angle, that every opportunity it gets, and it makes it come together more refreshingly, and it makes it the piece as a whole feel like a bigger epic saga, somehow even more epic than like say Final Fantasy VII or not 10, because 10 also does this really well, but like or 6. I know Final Fantasy fans they're gonna hate me, but because like 6 is like the pinnacle of the franchise for a lot of people, but like the music here. My point is that the music is just this grand orchestra that captures the sweeping adventure, in my opinion, better than 6 or 7. Yeah, it's really, I think 8 is really where Final Fantasy really kind of honed in on the musical quality, and from there that's when they started really kind of building on that. Like 10 and 12. They're it's phenomenal. Even 9, it's just amazing, the music there. I listen to them all the time, so uh, yeah, Final Fantasy music is really good. That's a good summation. All right, so lasting appeal, is Final Fantasy VIII worth playing today? Lindsay, is it worth playing today?
Most definitely. I think that any RPG, JRPG fan should play it, and anybody who's really into different video game music should listen to the soundtrack.
Yes, I agree. Tim, what do you think?
I don't have a lot of experience, like I said, with Final Fantasy, but um, based on, I mean, your guys raving about it and what I've seen about it, I would say yes.
You give a little thumbs up, right? Two thumbs up?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. As for me, I'll give it 2 thumbs up as well. I think I don't understand why Square Enix hasn't been very keen on this game. They've re-released 9, 10, 12 even, and it's like it's 7. You know, obviously they've released that like 1,000,001 times, but 8 is always kind of like this lonely child that it's forgotten for some reason, and I don't understand why they don't.
Apparently they don't want to release it for the Switch yet.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's when the debate kind of reignited there, which is because like 9 and 10 and 12 and all these other, and then 15 is on it through Pocket Edition, right? And 7 obviously is on it, so it's like, okay, and what about 8? It's like nobody. I don't understand why they don't care about 8, and maybe it's because its story is just completely nonsense. In my opinion, like I don't. Not completely nonsense, but it's very abstract. It's very like, despite like the believable characters and the very convincing design of it all. Like, I feel like its narrative is just, I don't know what you're thinking with that. So maybe that's why. But when you think about it, like, 7 is also really fantastical. Like, it's really out there. So I don't know. I don't know. It's strange that it's been given the treatment that it has been by Square, but maybe they'll have a change of heart. I don't know. We have to see. All right, so that about wraps up our impressions of Final Fantasy VIII. Join us next week as we discuss Street Fighter 4, which, believe it or not, hold on to your seats, hold on to your ass. It released 10 years ago. Street Fighter 4 released 10 years ago on February 12th, 2009. I still can't believe that's real. Like, that's a fact. Because, like, wow. I feel like...
It's still hard for me to think that 2009 was 10 years ago.
Isn't it like, aren't you also like in disbelief? Because I feel like that game came out maybe 4 or 5 years ago, not 10. Like, jeez, oh my god. Anyway, we'll be talking about Street Fighter 4 next week, so join us again. Alright, so what are we playing next week, guys? Lindsay, let's start with you. What are you playing next week?
Okay, so I plan on streaming and playing the Pringles game, which is originally on Genesis. It's on Genesis. It's either Genesis or the Mega Drive, whatever it is. It's by Sega. I'm gonna play that on emulator, speedrun it.
What do you do in that game?
You eat Pringles.
Oh, of course.
You eat all of the Pringles for the whole game. That is the goal. As the Pringles guy, the Pringles head thing. Yeah.
So it's kind of like Pac-Man, but
yeah. But you have to look at it. He's literally like bouncing on the Pringles to eat them. So
this is the most bizarre thing I've ever heard in my life. Is it like Pepsi Man, or so it's like
it's on the like same scale as Pepsi Man. They're both meme games. They're both kind of they're very out there with their themes.
Okay.
So I'm gonna play that. I'm gonna speedrun it. Right now my time in that I think is like 12 minutes. It's either 12 minutes or it's under 10. I can't remember. And then I'm also gonna, let's see, I'm gonna play some more Super Mario Party on the Switch. And then, well, tonight I'm gonna play League, so.
League of Legends.
Yeah.
I feel so old asking if this is League of Legends or not. Probably shouldn't have asked that. Anyway, Tim, what are you gonna play next week?
I'm not sure. I finished Deltarune completely, I think. I might actually write a review on that. I know it's old, but I noticed we didn't have a review on Keen Gamer, so I might do that. Other than that, I don't know. I've actually been I forgot I've actually been playing Terraria recently again.
Yes.
I tend to come back to it unexpectedly, so I've been doing that. Yep, I might do more of that. It's a good game. I have to get to 1,000 hours. I haven't done that yet, but I'm so close.
Like my cap in Terraria is like 263, I think. But I haven't played it for a few years. But I always want to play it. If I go back to it though, I know that I'm gonna put that over every other game, and it's gonna just upset me because I'm not getting further in other games. So
We should like start a server.
yes, we should do that. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know anything about this game.
Well, it's like
It's the
what,
best
$5
game.
on Steam?
You gotta
It's
play
usually
it.
like $5 on Steam.
Okay. So like, what do you do?
It's worth it.
Is it like Minecraft?
You mine stuff, kind of,
It's
but there's
it's like similar to Minecraft, but in 2D.
Oh. Okay.
well, and then there's also like the focus of big focus is like there's a whole bunch of bosses. The idea is that you get like you explore the world and you get like tons of ores and you find weapons and armor and like items and accessories and make yourself super cool. There's different classes you can kind of play as, and generally you're just trying to beat a boss, get its stuff, and then progress up to different bosses and kill them, and
Interesting.
it's kind of it.
All right.
It's very
I mean-
fun.
I mean, sure. I don't see why not. It sounds interesting. I'm really
And
kind
it's
of
always
clueless. Huh?
it's cheap on Steam. Like the priciest it'll be is $10, but
It
it'll
goes
go
on
down-
sale all the time.
Yeah, it'll go down to like $5, $3. So yeah, it's worth it.
All right. I might look into that then. Very cool. As for what I'll be playing this upcoming week, I was thinking about actually. I'm going on a little vacation this weekend, so I was actually thinking about dishing out my my PS Vita for the first time in like 4 years, or more like 2 years, and playing this. There's one game I really want to play called Severed, and I don't know if you guys know about it. Do you know?
Nope.
Severed?
I haven't heard of it.
You haven't? It's basically by the same people who've made Guacamelee, and it's the same kind of art style, but it's like a darker kind of tone. I think it stars like a young girl who is like trapped in some kind of apocalyptic kind of void or something. But anyway, it looks kind of cool. It's very kind of touch sensitive and really. I've always wanted to play it because it always looked interesting to me, but I've never got to. So hopefully I'll get a chance to play that this upcoming week. Alright, so that about wraps it up for this episode of the Time Hop Podcast. Again, I'm your host, Dave Lozada. You can find me on Twitter at XenoCreator125. You can find Lindsay on Twitter at InfamRedYoshi. And Tim is here. He's writing articles on Keen Gamer as usual. Thank you everyone for joining us this week. Join us again next week for Street Fighter 4. Have a good week, everyone. Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.